Atlanta Press Club Debates 2008, the Democratic race for the 5th Congressional District, is brought to you from Georgia Public Broadcasting. Here's the moderator for tonight's debate.
Good evening. I'm Dennis O'Hare, political reporter for WXIA-TV 11 Alive in Atlanta. Welcome to our 2008 election campaign debates originating from the studios of GPB. Tonight's debate is organized by the Atlanta Press Club, and we also welcome our online audience at gpb.org. Now, let's meet the Democratic candidates facing each other in Georgia's 5th Congressional District primary election. They are in alphabetical order. Markel Hutchins, a community activist and ordained minister. He is currently the managing principal of a consulting firm. John Lewis declined the Atlanta Press Club's invitation to debate, and he will be represented by an empty podium. Lewis is a civil rights activist who has represented Georgia's 5th Congressional District since 1987. And Mabel Thomas, who is the state representative for Atlanta's District 55. She is also the owner of a communications business. Well, those are the candidates, and here's the format for tonight's debate. In the first round, each candidate will answer 2 questions. 1 minute will be allotted for the answer, and 30 seconds will be allowed for rebuttal. But as moderator, I will determine if a rebuttal is appropriate. In the second round, the candidates will question one another, and in the third round, our panelists will continue the questioning until we run out of time. And at the end of the question and answer period, each candidate will make a 30-second closing statement. Now let's meet our panel of prominent Georgia journalists selected by the Atlanta Press Club. They are Susanna Capelouto, news director for GPB. Next is Shannon McCaffrey, political reporter for the Associated Press. And our third panelist is Eric Sturgis, a reporter with the Atlanta Journal-Constitution. Now let's get started with the debate. In this round, the order of candidates to be questioned has been randomly selected, and we begin with Susanna Capelouto's question for Mabel Thomas.
Ms. Thomas, you failed in your attempt to unseat John Lewis in 1992. Why challenge him again, and why now?
Well, I think that the times that we're dealing in are very important, and it's time for a change. And when you look at this situation, you know that people are hurting all over America. We have issues around high gas costs. People are talking about traffic. Just move from the house to their jobs, they're stuck in traffic. We look at Grady Hospital, something that's really dear to my heart. There's people losing their jobs all over Atlanta. I think that if you're going to be in a position as great as congressperson, then you must be willing to deliver services to Atlanta. So the need was there in 1992. And now the need is there now for leadership that's proven, leadership that's not stuck in the past, but leadership that's forward-thinking and leadership that will be accessible and very much in touch with the citizens of Atlanta.
Ms. Thomas, thank you very much. Shannon McCaffrey now has a turn to ask a question of Markel Hutchins.
Good evening, Mr. Hutchins. You're running against a man who has more than 2 decades in the House, who is in the House leadership, and who's been an icon in the civil rights movement. What makes you better equipped than he is to represent this district, and wouldn't the district suffer from the lack of his seniority if he leaves?
Well, let me first start by saying that we thank Congressman Lewis and the generation that he marched with that brought us across bridges in the 1960s. But there are additional bridges to take us across. And I just believe that it is time for change. And the winds of change are blowing in America, and they certainly are blowing here in the 5th Congressional District. There has been an argument made by Congressman Lewis's office that we will lose the seniority that he holds in the United States House of Representatives. But when we look at the high cost of gas, when we look at crime that is soaring in the 5th Congressional District, when we see the jobs that are being shipped from Atlanta to places overseas and the job loss that has caused, we don't see any evidence of Congressman Lewis's seniority in the House of Representatives. So what I propose is that we send an advocate to Washington that has the energy and the enthusiasm and the determination to fight for the people in the 5th Congressional District and bring the resources home that the people need and deserve.
All right, Reverend Hutchins, thanks very much. And Eric Sturgis's question will now go to Mabel Thomas.
Representative Thomas, over the past 2 years, what vote are you most disappointed in with Congressman Lewis, and can you explain why?
Well, when you really think about it, the vote that I'm concerned about is the vote that people may not recall, but there was a vote taken early on to go to war. The only person that did not vote, did not go to war, was Barbara Lee from Oakland, California. So even though the person that we're talking about is a civil rights icon and is supposed to be in touch. Basically, they voted for the war initially, and subsequently, even though now they may say they want to bring them home, but the vote that was taken 2 years ago was a vote that the only person that voted against it was Barbara Lee in Oakland, California. So what I'm saying to you is, if you're for peace, you have to stand for peace. You have to stand for peace when it comes up 2 years ago. You have to stand for peace now, because that's what time it is. It's time for peace in the world and for us to work together as nations to working together.
Thank you, Representative Thomas. And the final question in this round now comes from Susanna Capilouto, and it goes to Markel Hutchins.
Mr. Hutchins, what legislative experience do you bring to this job?
Well, I don't have any legislative experience, but I think that the idea of experience in leadership is what the question really is. I think when you look fundamentally at the work that I've been engaged in, not in recent times exclusively, much of my work in the case of Katherine Johnston has been touted by the media as my primary visibility that I bring to this race. But the fact of the matter is, as president of the National Youth Connection, we went to work with corporations and opened up doors of opportunity for next generation entrepreneurs. As an activist, I have led many causes that have brought forth hope and healing to people who may not otherwise have had a voice. And so what I think Washington needs, and what the American people are saying, is they want new leadership, new ideas, a new generation of leadership in Washington that is not wedded to the past, but is moving forward in the future. And that's the kind of leadership that I represent.
Thank you, Reverend Hutchins. And that concludes round one of our questions. In the second round, the candidates have the opportunity to ask one question of an opponent. Please limit those questions to 30 seconds. 1 minute will be allowed for answers, and the questioner will then have 30 seconds for rebuttal. The order of questions has been determined by random drawing. Candidates, please indicate to whom the question is addressed, and we had that in there right before we learned that Congressman Lewis would not be with us, so I think it's pretty obvious. The first question will be asked by Markel Hutchins.
Representative Thomas, I want to ask you first, is there any vote that you have taken in the affirmative in the Georgia legislature that you are not proud of?
Not that I can think of, but what I do know, Markel, is that being in the legislative process is a process that you have to have what we call earned leadership. It means that you have to actually look at the bills that come before you and make tough choices. I've been in the Georgia General Assembly for 14 years, and I've had to make tough choices. I'm more proud of legislation I passed most recently, which was legislation to keep Atlantans in their homes, where we actually giving tax relief to senior citizens, but all Atlantans at city level, county level, and at the school board level. Thank you.
Reverend Hutchins, you have 30 seconds to rebut.
I think, Representative Thomas, one of the things that has come to my attention and somewhat disappointed in is that you voted affirmatively for a predatory lending bill, House Bill 163, and everything that I've known about you in the past would have suggested to me that you never would have supported the payday lending bill to bring those companies back into this state. And so I just wondered if that was something that you were proud of. That's why I asked.
Well, I'd like to just rebuttal. What I'd like to say is that when you look at what's happening in terms of predatory practices, I'm one that knows that predatory practices happen at the housing level and different levels of government. But one thing for sure is when you look at the people that I represent in my community need a way to have access to capital. And what has happened is when people say to you, cut out every mechanism that's in place for lending for the very poor, then you actually are in a situation where you're really not dealing with real predatory lending, because if I bounce a check, I pay $34, and that's really predatory lending.
All right, Representative Thomas, thank you very much. And you now have time to ask a question of Reverend Hutchins.
Reverend Hutchins, and me and you had a chance to work together with the Katherine Johnston situation, and sometimes I've heard you talk about diplomacy. Are you proud of the way that you interacted with the community in our area, wherein we were never apprised of anything that was going on except we saw it on the news? You would call me late at night, we would talk, and then the next day you would act like you had had no conversation with me. It seems to me that you are more of a lone ranger in terms of your leadership style rather than one that's committed to the team. Do you believe that that's the way to move forward? And the other thing is, are you willing to stand and complete things? Because I understand that you also did not complete Morehouse College, but yet on your resume you say you're part of the Morehouse Alumni Association. I'm just wondering whether or not you're willing to complete and whether or not you're willing to stand as a team.
Finish the question.
First, let me say that I am quite proud of the manner in which we dealt with the case of Katherine Johnston. One of the things that has consistently happened in these kinds of cases is you bring in voices who are there not to solve problems, but there to accentuate the problems themselves. So the manner in which I handled the Katherine Johnston case, I'm most proud of, because we did something that has not been done in recent history. We closed the case, we found the truth that really happened, and the police officers that killed an innocent person are behind bars today. To answer the second part of your question, I am certainly committed to fulfilling every cause that I start. But everything is in place for a season. Representative Lewis. No, that was a flaw. Everything is in place for a season. And I think that when you look at people who have contributed substantively to the world, like Bill Gates, who's the wealthiest person in the world, Michael Dell, and others, who started off in college but got carried away in their career, that's where I sit. I was so busy finishing the work that I have been assigned and anointed to do. That's
all the time we have for your answer. Representative Thomas, you have 30 seconds to rebut.
Well, after the verdict on Officer Tesla, you said to the public that this was a victory. We believe in the community it was a partial victory based upon the fact that clearly Ms. Katherine Johnston's life was worth more than 5 years. So I don't believe that justice has been done in this case. That's why I proceeded with other elected officials to go to the federal government to say to the U.S. Attorney, let us also prosecute at the federal level. I do not think that justice has really been done. Katherine Johnston's life was worth more than 5 years.
All right. That concludes the round of questioning for each other. But now each of our candidates will have a chance to ask Congressman Lewis, who's not here, or ask the question they would have asked of Congressman Lewis if he were here. They'll have 30 seconds each to do that, and we'll begin with Reverend Hutchins.
Congressman Lewis, a 60-something-year-old African-American woman who had worked for you for 13 years by the name of Love Williams, worked for you diligently, and yet you fired her for seemingly no reason. She filed an age or race and gender discrimination lawsuit against your office, and you in turn fired Ms. Williams. Why did you settle that lawsuit at taxpayers' expense and try to shield and hide it from the public when you could have paid the settlement out of your own campaign coffers? Why would you do that? And secondly, Congressman Lewis, and probably most importantly, 75% of your campaign contributions in the last decade have come from political action committees. How can you be a change agent in Washington when all of your, the vast and overwhelming majority of your campaign contributions come from special interest groups? Right. Will you answer that, Congressman?
Reverend Hutchins, thank you very much. Representative Thomas, you now have 30 seconds to ask the question you would have asked Congressman Lewis if he were here.
Congressman Lewis, you are my representative. I think it's very important that you be in touch with the citizens of the 5th District. I'm not quite sure why you have spent so much time being a national leader and have forgotten the pain and suffering of people in the 5th District. They have no way to get in touch with you. You don't follow through. And even then, you send them a form, sort of like a blank form, not even really personalize it. The other questions I want to know, why did you say that you were helping the residents of public housing and having a meeting with them when in actuality brought the people from public housing on top of them and have sped up demolitions throughout the 5th District, and public housing residents asked for your help, and all you gave them was a photo op?
Representative Thomas, thank you very much. Now for our third round, we return to our panel of journalists. From this point until the closing statements, the panelists will ask a question of the candidate of his or her choice. Candidates have 1 minute to respond, and again, as moderator, I'll determine if the opposing candidate will get 30 seconds for rebuttal. And we begin this round with a question from Shannon McCaffrey of the Associated Press.
Reverend Hutchins, we've heard a lot about presidential endorsements in this race. Obviously, Congressman Lewis first endorsed Hillary Clinton and then switched that support to Barack Obama. How important was that flip-flop in your decision to get into this race, and what does it tell you about Congressman Lewis that he switched his support?
It is very important, I think, to note that when the rest of the nation, and in fact Congressman Lewis's district, voted 80% for Barack Obama, it was only after, a week after I announced my candidacy for Congress, that Congressman Lewis made the switch. I think what it says is that, that the incumbent, while loved and admired even by Representative Thomas and I, is out of sync and out of touch with the voters in the 5th Congressional District. And it was only after he drew opposition that he flip-flopped and decided that he was going to support Senator Obama the way his district had. But to answer your question most fully, I was committed to running for Congress even if he had endorsed Senator Obama, because I sincerely believe that Senator Obama will need some change agents in the Congress as he seeks to change the White House and change politics in Washington overall.
Reverend Hutchins, thank you very much. And I don't think that at this point he had said anything about you, Representative Thomas, so we will wait.
Okay.
We'll wait. Eric Sturgis has the next question.
Reverend Hutchins, across the nation there's been much debate about gay marriage. There have been questions about your position on this issue. Would you support the federal recognition of gay marriage for tax and other purposes?
I support civil unions. I support the rights of men and women who are gay, lesbian, bisexual, and otherwise to be treated with humaneness and with dignity. I do not support federal legislation that would require that marriage between that a civil union between two people of the same sex be considered marriage. I believe that marriage is between a man and a woman, and that's what I believe on that issue. But I do support, however, I do support that full rights and benefits for people who are in civil unions.
Even though Representative Thomas, even though he did not specifically refer to you, that's a question that could be directed at both of you, so we'll give you 30 seconds to respond to the same question.
Well, on this particular question, I'm on record. I'm on record for domestic partnerships as well as on record for civil unions. I do believe that it's really stated in the state Constitution now, marriage is between a man and a woman. I follow the law, and I believe that it's a fair judgment, but we don't believe that any time we should err against human rights. At any moment, we still need to stay at the space of human rights, because all people deserve our human rights and deserve the benefits of being American citizens.
Thank you, Representative Thomas. Our next question comes from Susanna Capilouto.
Mr. Hutchins, I wanted some clarification. You say that you're an ordained minister, and on your website I couldn't quite find where you were ordained. Can you tell us?
I am a member of Philadelphia Baptist Church and was ordained by Philadelphia Baptist Church. I started preaching officially when I was 16 years old, and I was licensed in the African American Methodist Church, the AME Church, St. Paul AME Church in Stone Mountain. In fact, I pastored a church, an African Methodist Episcopal church, on an interim basis when I was 17 years old.
Okay. Thank you, Reverend Hutchins. The next question comes from Shannon McCaffrey.
Ms. Thomas, I was wondering, you've mentioned frequently that John Lewis has not been responsive to the district and that he hasn't really brought home the bacon for Atlanta. What would your first priority be for the district if you were elected, and how would you accomplish that, given that you would not have seniority in the House?
Well, as already been stated, seniority has its purposes, but what we're talking about with Obama is a new change. We're talking about Congress not from the past, but Congress from the future. So the first thing I would do is to work with the mayor of this city, because the city is going through so much in terms of infrastructure. We're talking about increasing our taxes by 40%. The first thing we need to do is deal quickly with some of the infrastructure money that is in place at the federal government that could be used to give relief to our citizens at home. Also, what I would do is to make sure that I would parlay good committee assignments. I've served on a very prestigious committee at the state level: Judiciary, Natural Resources and Environment, Health and Human Resources, and MARTOC. I would also go to those committees at the federal level, so that I could be into action to make sure that we bring as much money as we can from the federal government to the state, and then to the city, because we really need resources from Washington, D.C., and that vast amount of money is there for us to do it.
All right, Representative Thomas, thank you. Eric Sturgis has the next question.
Representative Thomas, Atlanta's population has risen by about 20% since 2000, yet the poverty rate is 23%, among the highest in the nation. Why is it so high, and what would you do to help lower the rate? What specifically would you do to help lower the rate?
Well, when you look at what's going on in Atlanta, it's called gentrification. Many people have been basically priced out of Atlanta, and even though more people are coming in, we must come up with an economic stimulus package in Washington, D.C., that would specifically help our mayors and our county commissioners put in place job training programs. Job training programs for high-end jobs. Jobs so that we can make sure that people can pay for the housing that is available. Also, specifically what I do is to figure out a way to take some of the bureaucracy away from small businesses, because small businesses are the backbone of our economy. I think the small businesses need to be able to not be caught up in the bureaucracy, that they should be able to sustain themselves in a way that we can get to employ more people so that people can be, what I would say, active in the economy, because right now people are just out of it. Even people who have jobs, they're not able to pay for high gas costs, high food costs, and also healthcare costs that continue to rise. I would like to attack those issues, and I know with the experience I have at the state, I would be able to part some of that experience to the federal government because of not only my assertive leadership, but my leadership in diplomacy.
Thank you very much. And a few minutes ago, we gave you 30 seconds on a question that was asked to Mr. Hutchins. It's a good question for both of you, Mr. Hutchins. We'll give you 30 seconds as
Repeat the question, please.
Oh, Atlanta's population has risen by about 20% since 2000, yet the poverty rate is 23% among the highest in the nation. Why do you think it's so high, and what specifically would you do to lower the rate?
I think one of the primary reasons why the poverty rate in Atlanta has risen is, one, because we have had so many new people that have been displaced, for example, by Hurricane Katrina and other kinds of disasters around the South that have relocated to Atlanta, and there seem not to have been the jobs in place to sustain the kind of growth of population that we've seen in the city of Atlanta. What I propose is the kind of public-private partnerships that will allow for the congressperson to work with businesses in this community and increase the number of jobs and industries that are relocating to Atlanta. Let's put people in this community to work and move them out of poverty.
Thank you, Reverend Hutchins. Next question comes from Susanna Capilouto.
Mr. Hutchins, you've made age an issue in this campaign by saying that this race is a choice between the generation that started the movement to the one poised to continue it. What evidence do you have that John Lewis is no longer in tune with the younger generation? Just because of his age?
I think that that primarily every generation that produces a set of social challenges generically must also produce a set of leaders that deal with the problems in their generation. I say that Congressman Lewis has been in Congress for 22 years. 22 years is too long to be in any public office. That's why I support term limitations for any elected officials. 22 years of backroom dealing, wheeling and dealing, it makes sense then that Congressman Lewis could not support a change agenda and could not see what the rest of the district saw, and that was that Barack Obama would be the best choice for the Democratic nomination. This is really not about age. It's about who has the vision, the new generation of leadership thought to solve the difficult problems that we face in this community. And so while we honor Congressman Lewis for what he has done, it is simply time for folks who have not been marred in the politics of the past to move forward and give this country the direction it needs in the future.
All right, Reverend Hutchins, thanks very much. Our time for questions has now expired, so all right, I'm being told that we have time for one more question. I apologize, and it'll come from Shannon McCaffrey.
Hi there. Ms. Thomas, energy has been a big issue. Gas prices have been really tough for Georgians and Americans to handle. Do you support a federal gas tax holiday, and also do you support offshore drilling? What would your energy policy be if you were in Congress?
Well, the first thing I want to do is to end the tax breaks to big oil. They get too many tax breaks, and obviously we do have too much dependency on foreign oil. I think it clearly should be a moratorium, a holiday on the sales tax. I thought it should be that as well at the state level, because at least if you add it together, you're around 35 cents, and that might not seem like a lot, but it's a start. I think as far as offshore drilling, I would not say that I'm supportive of it. But what I am supportive of is a comprehensive energy plan that deals with alternative fuels like ethanol, biodiesel, electric cars, hybrid cars, and look at issues around transportation. And when you talk about transportation, not just talking about light rail, I'm talking about sidewalks. Let's build sidewalks in Atlanta so people can walk. Let's make Atlanta pedestrian friendly so that we can make sure that people can, if they decide to be healthy and walk, they have the opportunity. I think that there are opportunities in the United States for drilling oil wells that already exist. There needs to be new technology to bring them online, but there's stuff we can do in America without going to the Arctic refuges as well.
Thank you, Representative Thomas. And unfortunately, Reverend Hutchins, while it would have been a good question for both of you, our time has run out if we want to get to closing statements, and it is time for those. Again, this is Georgia's Democratic primary for the 5th Congressional District. And a reminder that Congressman John Lewis declined our invitation to debate. Each of our two candidates will now have 30 seconds. The order of the closing statements was randomly determined before the broadcast. The first closing statement will come from Mabel Thomas.
I believe that change is in the wind, but I know that change comes from within. I ask people not just to see this race in the terms of just voting for Mabel Thomas. What we're talking about is change that you can believe in. I ask you to take your dreams off the shelf. Take your dreams off the shelf and dust them off. There are things inside of you that you want to do. Let us work together for the 5th District. With your dreams coming true, our dreams coming true, and making a strong 5th District for throughout the 5th District, a strong 5th District that includes resources, jobs, and health care for all citizens.
Thank you,
very much.
Representative Thomas. We appreciate it. And now, Reverend Markel Hutchins with his closing statement.
This election is an opportunity for us to bridge the gaps between the glories of our past, the challenges of our present, and the hopes of our future. We have so many challenges here, like the high cost of energy and gas. I, unlike many Democrats, do support domestic drilling. I think if we have enough intelligence to send a satellite in outer space, we can drill in Alaska and protect our oil and environment at the same time. Representative spoke about my involvement in the Katherine Johnson case. I am so proud of the work that we did in that case. And while Representative Thomas and others wanted me to throw Officer Tesla and others under the bus, that's not my leadership style.
And that is our time. Thank you very much, Reverend Hutchins. And that concludes our debate. Our thanks to the candidates and to our panel of journalists. We'd also like to thank the Atlanta Press Club for arranging tonight's debate. Now, for more information about the Atlanta Press Club, you can visit www.atlantapressclub.org. The debates that air on Georgia Public Broadcasting will be archived on the Press Club's website. I'm Dennis O'Hare. Thanks for joining us for this primary election debate.
This program was funded in part by a grant from the late Tom Watson Brown and by supporters of Georgia Public Broadcasting. Thank you.